Can I invite to the stage, please, Leila Johnston, technologist and comedy writer and author and everything else. Ladies and gentlemen, Leila Johnston!
Hello. So, just a few things that you should probably know about me before we get going. I have written 3 books, 2 of which are quite geeky. The third one's out next month. Enemy of Chaos is a choose-your-own-adventure book for adults, about entropy, mostly. I was a technologist in residence at the Sheffield Site Gallery last year, which was a project bringing technology people into the world of culture and the arts to see what happened when you brought those worlds together. And that involved lots of Arduinos and electronics and stuff. I write regularly on hacking and military stuff for Wired UK. I am interested in obsolete programming languages, which you'll see in the course of the next 10 minutes, quite apparently. I also co-host a popular podcast called Shift Run Stop. Does anyone know where the words Shift Run Stop come from? Yeah, there's a man with his hand up, which I'm ignoring. It's it's a loading key thing that you have to hold down on a Commodore 64, which is an old computer for those of you under the age of 30. Which is most of you, actually. I'm the founder of 3 event series. Story Warp, the storytelling panel thing I used to co-host. The event was the thing about the apocalypse I did last year in London. And Hack Circus, which is my new project, which is an event series. And the magazine, all about how technology can be fun and interesting, and how we can bring performance and demonstration into tech to make it much more entertaining. So, what makes us do it? There's been a lot of talk about why more girls aren't into technology and science, I suppose. One way or another, people ask what it is about technology that makes it unappealing or different to the kind of things we're supposed to like. In other words, lots of people are asking what the problem is, but I want to take another approach. I'm more interested in what happens when you stop thinking about the problem for a moment and just enjoy yourself. I'm more interested in why so many women, in fact, so many people, are already into this stuff. I think that's an interesting place to start. I've made all these, by the way. It took a while to go into that, in an emulator, unfortunately. Yeah, I would have loved to have run this off an actual BBC Micro and done all the slides properly, but Helen was quite insistent that it was everything was on the same laptop, and it was a laptop from like the last millennium, unfortunately, which made things a bit difficult for me. Yeah, so the number one reason why we're into this stuff is because it's so interesting. I don't think of myself as a woman most of the time. What's it like to be a woman in technology? You get asked all the time. Well, without getting too willfully philosophical about it, I don't actually self-identify as principally female. I don't define my thoughts in terms of female thoughts. I'm not aware of the way I read or watch things or ride a bus or use a computer as uniquely female. I don't find it useful or convincing to consider my behaviour or interests as female before I think of them as mine. All I know, actually, is what it's like to be me. I'm sure some people can relate to this, but some of my interests are male and some are female. But all the time people say, oh, were you a tomboy when you were growing up? And it's really tedious, and I'm sure a lot of you guys get the same thing. I've been told my interests are more like a boy's than a girl's, but make no mistake, I have plenty of girl interests as well. But they go unnoticed because they don't align with they're more aligned with what society expects. I might be standing too close to this microphone. I've been lucky enough to have been given the opportunity to see interesting things for what they are. Interestingness is everything. I feel strongly we need to take a break from hand-wringing and asking what it is we're doing wrong and start remembering that we do the things we do and we do them well because we enjoy doing them. We need to be shamelessly demonstrating our passions, not because it's surprising or quirky or as a reaction to anything, but absolutely independently of our ideas about women. We should be allowing ourselves to do these things just because they're fun. Perhaps we can demolish preconceptions without ever actually mentioning those preconceptions, because demonstrable passion yields impressive results. And when you have these results, we have a kind of proof that actually silences arguments. So obstacles to interestingness, I think, are the key thing to bear in mind, and the best way I've found to address them is through demonstrations of fun. I'm lucky enough to only do the things that I find interesting. The reason I don't feel any direct threat or limit from society is because I only work with the currency of enjoyment. Perhaps it's naive, And I know there is more to society's subtle limitations than our immediate preconceptions. But I feel remarkably defended from glass ceilings and everyday sexism and all kinds of irritating assumptions by the fact that I'm absolutely committed to fun. So what else makes us do it? I did that one as well. Just take a moment to enjoy it. It took me ages. We associate it with good things. So this is quite a nostalgic little collage for me. Some chuckles of recognition from the older members of the audience. The games on the left are two of my most favourite games from when I was first using a computer in the early 80s, Philosopher's Quest, Sphinx Adventure. 8-bit puzzle games, completely text-based, text adventure games, we call them. The computer in the middle is an Acorn Electron, which was the machine I learned to program on, and the machine I played these games on, actually, loading off cassettes. The top right is another favourite game of mine. Does anyone know who is not a man in this room? Someone said Repton. Do you know which Repton? So close. Such a shame. Yeah, it's Repton 2, of course. The future reference that ever comes up again in your life. Now you know. The boulders, teleporters, classic Repton 2. And at the bottom right there is a picture of a child pretending to be me, who I found on the internet. Couldn't actually find any old pictures of me. So, in my experience, this is how passions are born. I have entirely positive and fun memories of computing. I was a young child in the early 80s when home computing was in its technicolor infancy, and typing pools were strong enough memory that it hadn't seriously occurred to anyone that computers were supposed to be a male interest. It's no coincidence that I'm now involved with various retro computing events, as we saw. Just enjoy that one again. As we saw there, that's at Replay, which is a major UK retro gaming expo, which I helped to host a couple of years ago. And I co-hosted this ZX Spectrum's 30th birthday party that happened at the BFI last year. Obviously, this is a niche hobby, and I'm an extreme example. Most technical people don't fixate slightly obsessively on the early days of their passions to these lengths. But positive memories are actually the bedrock. This is my point. They establish the subconscious notion that programming and gaming is fun and creative, and actually not gendered in any way. When I was about 13, I entered a school programming competition with my friend Sarah. Sarah's mum was a maths teacher in my school. I was just a nerd. And Sarah and I designed an animated Easter card in Pascal on the school's Archimedes A3000. That's not the actual one in that picture, by the way. It was fun and exciting, and typing those bloody coordinates took days. We worked through lunch breaks and evenings to get the graphics finished. Neither of us thought there was anything remotely unusual about us being interested in computers. They were just another interesting tool for creating cool stuff. We loved it, and we got on with it. And by the end, we weren't doing it for the competition anymore. We were just doing it because we were so into it. And because we loved doing it, we did a good job of it. We won the competition, and we were awarded a giant bar of Galaxy chocolate each. It's like that big. It was amazing. I ate it in like a day. It's brilliant. Best day of my life. It's the only thing I've ever won, I think. Sarah now works as a satellite engineer, by the way. I stalked her on the internet and found that out. So these days, yes, these slides are from recent times. I do still write programs in old languages for fun. I also write simple things for Arduinos and other devices, and I write about working with machines. This is an Instagram simulator I made on my BBC Micro. This one at the bottom right is a Twitter, sort of a Twitter game, really, Twitter simulator, where you get randomized followers and stuff, and it's based on an early version of Twitter, obviously. That's why it doesn't look quite like what you expect. I asked people on Twitter, speaking of Twitter, what I should draw for them just using coordinates and plotting each pixel individually. I had a long night ahead of me and I was a bit bored. And they said, do a dinosaur. So I drew them a dinosaur on my BBC, and that's a picture of it. Moving on. So what else makes us do it? Well, it's actually relaxing. It's fun. It's fun to have fun. It is, in fact, not stressful to have a hobby or an interest and to indulge it sometimes. I wonder if we realise it's okay to relax into something nerdy without feeling it's pursuant to a career and associated pressure. I really feel that you have to enjoy something before you can get good at it, and then once you're good at it, then you want to do it as a career. But the first step always has to be to enjoy it and to consider it that it's fun. We're encouraged to be social. It's like there's something wrong with you if you don't want to do sociable things. This is true of everyone, of every age and gender, but I think it's fair to say the social pressure weighs slightly more heavily on women. People don't know how to handle contented loners or how to deal with solitary hobbies. Of course, it's all a bit disingenuous, really, because geeks are some of the most secretly sociable people in the world, as we all know. But what I'm saying is, let's not feel we have to make things girl-friendly by engineering social tech opportunities. It could even be a bit off-putting and stressful to women with a particular mindset. I have to try harder to mix and socialise and fit in. I can't even be a geek properly. So eagle-eyed programmers among you will realise that this is not the code that corresponds to this programme. It was something else, but I didn't have it because it was on the BBC, and that's from an emulator, and it's very difficult to get them to speak to each other. Anyway, let's move on. It is relaxing. Programming, electronics, any kind of making is incredibly calming and focusing. If you have the kind of brain that needs to focus on something, you might find you learn more doing this kind of thing than you would if you were doing some other sort of relaxing, mindless activity like going to a spa or something else that women are supposed to like doing. It's therapeutic. There are actually worse things that your brain could be fixated on, and there are less useful things you could learn than thinking about some of these kind of things. So in summary, we're interested because it's interesting. One of the reasons people like me stick with this kind of thing, beyond all the other interesting things we do, is because it caught our attention at the right moment in our lives. It felt like a viable option long before we realised we weren't supposed to be interested in it, and it feels like a viable option now to anyone who finds it sufficiently stimulating that many of the obstacles lose their relevance and power. What if it's not a challenge, or a chore, or a duty, or even a social obligation that we get into this stuff, but a simple pleasure that originates from within? I really feel that if we can remember this stuff is fun, everything else will begin to fall into place. And that's the end. Thank you very much for listening. Cheers.